In the not-too-distant future, population growth and climate change have wreaked havoc on the planet. Humanity is given the opportunity to relocate to the space colony Nova Prime with the formation of the Unification Ranger Corps, which plans the planet's departure. A race of aliens known as Skrulls sends a group of Ursas to invade since they see that humans are now exposed. While they are blind, these deadly predators, known as Ursas, can hunt by detecting the chemicals that humans emit when they are alarmed. Using their swords, the Rangers battle the Ursas to stop the invasion, and Prime Commander Cypher, who has learned to control his emotions, emerges as a hero. The Ursas can't see you if you don't show any signs of panic. This is a tactic called ghosting. Kitai, Cypher's son, is a trainee at the Ranger Academy a few years after the conflict because he wants to be just like his father. He exerts extra effort even during the most straightforward tests, like jogging, to demonstrate his uniqueness. Despite having excellent exam results, Kitai doesn't yet receive the promotion to Ranger he desired because he isn't performing well in the field. As Cypher returns from a mission later that evening, Kitai informs him that he was unsuccessful in getting promoted. Instead of offering his son consolation, Cypher acts coldly as usual and says Kitai must not have been prepared because the commander is skilled in his work. Cypher constantly displays a chilly demeanor toward his family, as if he doesn't know how to switch off the soldier mentality. He even commands Kitai at the dinner table and demands that he always address him as Sir. During dinner, Cypher tells his wife Faya that he would be departing the following day for Ifito to train cadets and brings her a gift he received from the mission. He does, however, aim to retire after that mission is finished and collaborate with her in the administrative division. Faya expresses her delight at this and notes that Kitai needs him to spend more time with him, interact with him, and not be so distant. Instead of a superior, Kitai wants a father. Because he holds himself accountable for the death of his sister Senshi and tries to relate to her by reading her favorite book, Moby Dick, she believes Kitai to be very insecure. In light of this, Cypher approaches Kitai and offers to accompany him to Ifito. Later, as the crew prepares to depart, Kitai spots a ranger approaching his father and thanking him for saving him during the battle with the Ursas. The ranger has one leg severed. Even if Cypher believes it is unnecessary, the ranger nonetheless asks his friends to assist him in standing up so he can properly salute the savior of humanity. As soon as the journey starts, Kitai tries to get in touch with his father and let him know he's reading Moby Dick, but Cypher isn't much of a talker and gives him curt, unresponsive responses. He then advises Kitai to rest for the remainder of the voyage. Once Cypher falls asleep, Kitai exits his seat to look around the ship while pretending to be obedient. As he discovers a mystery region with caution signs, the enforcing rangers reprimand him right away. They let him in to inspect their cargo, which turns out to be an Ursa that will be used to teach the cadets how to ghost, once they know he is Cypher's son. The ranger challenges Kitai to touch the Ursa's shell to see how well he can control his emotions, but as Kitai gets closer, he starts to remember the night his sister passed away. Senshi put Kitai in a glass container when an Ursa invaded their house to prevent the monster from smelling him. The Ursa notices Kitai's anxiety as he is ready to touch the shell and roars at him, stunning him into backing away. Meanwhile, Cypher awakens and feels some odd vibrations. To confirm impending danger, he leans his ring against the ship's wall. Kitai is told to put on his life jacket and fasten himself to his seat while he quickly tells the rangers to be on high alert. Cypher then walks to the cockpit and alerts the pilots to the fact that they are approaching an asteroid storm. The spacecraft starts to shake as the asteroids hit it, losing an engine before they can change direction. In order to get to a different anchorage, Cypher commands the pilots to enter the closest wormhole. The ship securely exits the wormhole and makes a close appearance to Earth, which is forbidden by law due to its risks. The pilots explain that because the spacecraft has sustained too much damage, they must land as soon as possible. Cypher wants to go somewhere else. Kitai panics as the ship starts to shake once more as it approaches Earth's atmosphere, but Cypher instructs him to take deep breaths to calm himself down. At that instant, the spacecraft starts to disintegrate, and Kitai passes out as Cypher is carried away by the wind. Kitai wakes up a short while later to find the ship has crashed. He gets up to hunt for the other rangers, but all of them are already dead when he finds them. Fortunately, he locates Cypher and discovers that he is still alive. Kitai then waits for Cypher to awaken by his side. When Cypher awakens, Kitai informs him that the ship's tail has vanished, indicating that the Ursa has also vanished. When Kitai tries to use the emergency beacon, Cypher shows him where it is located in the cockpit, but it is broken. Cypher then checks the inventory and confirms there is another beacon in the ship's tail before Kitai places him on a stretcher and carries him to the ship's main computer. Given that he has injuries to both of his legs, Cypher assigns Kitai the task of locating the tail, which the scanner indicates is around 100 kilometers away. After that, Kitai receives his blade in addition to 6 bottles of air filtration inhalers that will aid in his ability to breathe in the hazardous atmosphere of Earth. Also, he tells him that there are cameras in both the life jacket and the backpack, so Cypher will see whatever Kitai sees. Everything on Earth has evolved to kill people, which makes Kitai recall having to watch his sister get slain by an Ursa. The youngster needs to be extremely careful. Cypher responds that the Ursa they were carrying must have perished in the collision when Kitai inquires about it, but it is safer to suppose that it is still somewhere in the world. Kitai departs the spacecraft after using one of the inhalers and becomes anxious since he can see all the bodies around. Cypher makes him take a knee and tells him to focus on the present to help him conquer his worries in order to calm him down. So Kitai starts his expedition, which gives him the opportunity to encounter several species he has never seen before. He is frightened by a spider on his hand as he climbs a cliff, and when he gets to the top, he is treated to views of animals grazing on the plains and birds soaring over the sky. It's an incredible view, especially for someone who has spent their entire life in space. The Ursa is then sought after by a number of probes, and Kitai is informed by Cypher that nighttime temperatures drop precipitously. He needs to locate one of the many hotspots before nightfall in order to survive. Next, after scanning his own wounds to establish that his leg bones were fractured, Cypher thought about taking some painkillers to lessen the discomfort. Cypher is reminded of the moment his daughter contacted him while he was in the military by the labels warning that the shot can make him drowsy and impair his vision. An original copy of Moby Dick had been discovered by Senshi, which was significant because authentic books were no longer readily available. Cypher had reacted angrily to her enthusiasm, and now that he's beginning to think about it, he chooses not to take the medication. Kitai realizes his suit has become black after a short while. It has motion sensors, Cypher explains, and the color black indicates that a life form is headed toward him. Cypher tells Kitai to remain motionless as a huge baboon suddenly appears from the trees. The baboons all emerge and start throwing rocks at Kitai when he chooses to throw a rock at it in an effort to scare it away. In order to prevent the baboons from pursuing him, Cypher directs the youngster toward the closest river while he starts to run as quickly as he can. Even though the baboons are no longer pursuing him, Kitai continues to run with his blade extended because he is too anxious and afraid to stop. To get him to stop and take the knee so he can calm down, Cypher has to holler at him. At that point, Kitai's bloodstream contains toxins, and Cypher observes this and instructs his son to examine Kitai. Kitai finds a leech on his palm and removes it right away, but the toxin is still present in his body. When Cypher instructs him to administer the antidote, Kitai has to drop his body on the needle to make it stick and passes out as a result since he is losing feeling in his hands. A hot spot is 10 kilometers away when Kitai is forced to awaken by Cypher as he notices the temperature is dropping. While Cypher watches his son, Kitai starts sprinting as quickly as he can. Cypher hears the computer tell Kitai that he requires an artery shunt to treat his leg. Once more, Cypher rejects the medication and endures the procedure's discomfort instead. He considers Senshi's 19th birthday party, which he was forced to witness through a screen since he was on a mission, as he works. Cypher finally agreed to blow out the candles on Senshi's cake after much pleading. Because younger Kitai blew the candles for him, they were out. When Kitai finally arrives at the hotspot, he inspects his gear and notices 2 of his inhalers are broken, but he tells his father he has all of them while in fact just having one. Cypher observes a response on the screen that would suggest lying, but he stays silent. In order to ask his father how he was able to ghost during the war, Kitai grabs a vial and hides under a tree as it starts to rain. Cypher claims that an Ursa once used its pincer to stab him in the shoulder, and while they struggled, they both tumbled into the river. When Cypher decided to die, the Ursa tried to drown him, but when she couldn't find him anymore, the pincer emerged. Cypher had realized that while anger may exist, fear is merely something that people imagine for the future. Cypher sends Kitai to the waterfall the following morning since the probes have discovered some intriguing readings. A group of dead monkeys Kitai encounters en route serves as evidence of a bigger threat. As soon as Kitai reaches the falls, Cypher forces him to check his inventory, and Kitai makes another attempt to lie about the inhalers. Kitai is given the order to abort the expedition after Cypher calls out his lying and performs some calculations that show he won't be able to complete it without the inhalers. Kitai declares to Cypher that he won't be a coward once more after reflecting on how he had to watch Senshi die and how he refuses to do it with his father. As Cypher wasn't at home to defend his family when the Ursa attacked, he believes Cypher to be the coward. Kitai jumps down the falls while utilizing his suit to glide through the air, ignoring Cypher's jab and his repeated requests for him to turn around. As a large condor appears at that precise moment and starts pursuing him, Kitai tries to steer to hide behind the waterfalls. The condor, though, is swift, and as soon as Kitai emerges, the bird pounces on him. As Kitai loses consciousness, Cypher is unable to reach him. Cypher awakens a little while later in the condor's nest along with its young. When he tries to depart silently, numerous lions suddenly appear and try to enter the building so they may collect food. When the condor attacks the pride, several of the animals avoid it and continue to try to go inside. When a third lion enters, Kitai is forced to wield his blade after managing to fling one out, and the condor grabbing another. Instead of engaging in combat, he carves a hole in the ground to cause the lion to fall. As all of the lions have left the area, Kitai departs the nest. He is horrified to witness the condor lamenting the loss of all of its young. After that, Kitai tries to call his father but finds that his communicator is damaged. Cypher receives photographs from his drones showing the rangers' carcasses hanging from a tree, indicating that the Ursa is moving around outside of the ship. Just stating that he has lost their son, Cypher chooses to record a message for his wife. Kitai continues his journey through the forest in the meantime, hiding from the cold by entering a cave. He discovers cavemen's artwork there as well as numerous poisonous snakes that he narrowly avoids. The odds are poor, but he must attempt nevertheless. He does some math regarding the remaining distance and his inventory. The condor follows Kitai as he leaves the cave the following morning. Kitai starts to flee, believing that it intends to strike, and soon he will need to use his final inhaler. Kitai then constructs a small raft to travel downstream. In his nightmares, Senshi appears next to him when he is sleeping, and he tries to explain to her that, on the day of her passing, he almost escaped the containment to assist her. Senshi doesn't believe him, but she doesn't mind because she believes that by rescuing himself, he made the right decision. She also believes that Cypher is upset with himself over what transpired. Senshi yells at Kitai to wake up as he attempts to recite Moby Dick to demonstrate that he has been reading it. When Kitai opens his eyes, he sees that the raft has arrived at the shore. As the temperature begins to decrease, Kitai scrambles to locate a hotspot, but he isn't quick enough and collapses to the ground as the plants around him begin to freeze. Kitai fears that he will perish, but when he awakens in the morning, he finds something on top of him that has kept him warm. It is the condor, which sacrificed itself to save him in recompense for protecting its young. Kitai thanks the creature and proceeds on his way. Even though it's getting difficult to breathe, he's motivated to keep going after finding a piece of the ship on the ground. Kitai finds the ship's tail a little while later and grabs another sword and some more inhalers right afterwards. He further explores the area and discovers that the Ursa shell is open, indicating that the monster has fled. Cypher is daydreaming about young Kitai giving him his own blade back on the ship. Kitai's voice abruptly wakes him awake because he discovered a communicator and the beacon in the ship's tail. As Kitai is in the black zone, Cypher tries to speak to him, but he is unable to be heard. Despite not being aware of this, Kitai attempts to use the beacon but it is unsuccessful. Kitai starts to have a tantrum out of frustration and desperation, but soon he recalls his father's words and bends down to calm himself. Knowing that there is interference in the vicinity, Kitai decides to climb the nearby volcano in order to activate the beacon without any obstacles. Kitai discovers the body of a ranger on his approach to the volcano, along with the Ursa that was left there to frighten him and set off his pheromones. When Kitai approaches the volcano's base, he makes another attempt to launch the beacon but is unsuccessful. Kitai does his best to ignore it and continues on. Cypher sees the Ursa on the scanner and wishes his son would move quickly to avoid being discovered. Then Kitai goes inside a cave to look for a route to the volcano's summit. The Ursa is waiting for him inside, and when he enters, it attacks right away but is then caught behind a pile of boulders. Kitai decides to hide in a body of water as the Ursa frees itself and hunts him as he starts to run. Back on board, the computer begins to malfunction, denying Cypher access to the medical care and forcing him to start losing consciousness. Kitai, meantime, is swimming in the direction of a light source that would enable him to surface into a pit. The Ursa unexpectedly comes out of the water and snatches the boy's foot as he begins to climb it to reach the volcano's peak. The beast is kicked back into the water by Kitai, who then completes climbing the hole to reach the outside. As soon as Kitai tries to turn on the beacon, the Ursa reappears and leaps on him, kicking him in the rocky areas and forcing him to drop the device. Kitai remembers the time Senshi shielded him and all the tips Cypher has given him while he writhes on the ground in agony. This memory helps Kitai focus and go through his anxiety so he can ghost. When the creature loses sight of him, Kitai uses the opportunity to attack it with his blade by confusing it. Kaida simply needs a few accurate blows to kill the beast because it is unable to protect itself. Cypher witnesses everything before he permanently loses consciousness. After that, Kitai finally activates the beacon, and the Rangers show up to save them in a short while. Although Kitai is concerned about his father, he finds out he is alright. Kitai rushes to embrace his father, as he declares his desire to collaborate with his mother, but Cypher struggles to stand up out of respect for his bold kid. Cypher answers by hugging back for the first time ever and saying that he, too, wants to retire.